Hello and welcome. I'm Kenzie.
And I'm Carli, and this is Ask a Therapist.
Each week, we explore life's most relatable questions, from relationships and boundaries to burnout and self-worth, all through a therapist's lens.
We're licensed therapists, but this isn't therapy. It's a place for insight, reflection, and a little humor along the way.
Your questions,
our insights.
Ask a Therapist. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. The content shared should not be considered a substitute for professional mental health care, diagnosis, or treatment. We strongly encourage listeners to seek help from a licensed mental health professional for any personal or psychological concerns.
Any advice or commentary offered is based solely on the information provided. As such, we cannot guarantee any specific outcomes, and the feedback given should not be interpreted as professional mental health advice. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call 911, 988, or 211.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We have got some holiday special episodes for y'all. We have the holidays coming up, and so we thought that it would be a good idea to answer some questions that are specific to what you might encounter around the holidays. And so with that in mind, we're going to start our icebreaker question with Carli. What is your favorite holiday tradition?
Yes, so I honestly have a hard time with this. I don't really have any holiday traditions that are super important to me, if I'm honest. I do celebrate Christmas. And I love being at home for Christmas Eve, to like wake up at home, and my daughter definitely wants to wake us up prior to, whatever time we would naturally wake up, but that's a part of the tradition. So I'm good with that. And usually we're battling her to like, can we at least brush our teeth and get some coffee? And then like, we're with you, we're downstairs. So I would say that's probably it. Oh, and also both my husband and I, we live in Pittsburgh. We're both from Pittsburgh. So typically we're going to visit some family on either one or both sides. Hopefully people are like gathering in one particular place, and we can like go and, see some of his family, see some of mine. So that is a tradition that I enjoy as well. But what about you?
Oh, so nice. There's so many. Like, I feel like there's so many beautiful parts of the holiday. I also celebrate Christmas. And so I'm thinking about, when we were younger, like my parents do, we would always have to kind of like wait at the top of the steps. And my mom would say, well, I got to go check if Santa's come. Like, I don't know if he's been here yet. We would always go to my grandma's Christmas Eve, and then on the drive home, our neighborhood would put out like luminaries. So it would be in white paper bags with lights, and so the whole neighborhood would kind of be lit up for Santa to find the houses. And so those are special. But I'm also just thinking about how as time goes on, and I'm married now, and so I've created my own traditions with my husband. And one of the things that we do is we don't get each other gifts, but we do something. We do an activity around the holidays, and we take turns on who plans it. So if I plan it this year, he'll plan it the next year, and it's always a surprise for the other person. So that's kind of a fun tradition that we like to do. And, I'm sure as our family starts to evolve, that might look different too, but it's kind of fun just to have something for different stages. And that's one of my favorite that we do right now.
Yeah, I really like that. So this year, are you planning, or are you going to be surprised?
I'm surprised this year.
Oh, okay. So you'll have to report back to us what the activity was.
I will. Absolutely. It's always kind of exciting. I'm not sure if I like planning more or being surprised more. Like, it's fun each time. So I'm already kind of thinking like, all right, what do I want to do next year? And then it's always fun to figure out what he thinks of too. So yeah, it's a fun tradition.
That's cool. I like that. I might have to adopt a version of that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so let's jump into our question, which is very much in line with holiday traditions, and also a little bit of like merging families. So let's talk about this one. This question comes from a 32-year-old female, and she says, holiday stress starting. My sister's new boyfriend doesn't like presents for Christmas. He says it's materialistic and costs too much money. Now my sister doesn't want to do presents anymore, while we think it's our family tradition. Any thoughts on family traditions and new family members wanting to change them? I really love this question. Kenzie, what do you think about this one?
I love it too. Well, one, I just want to share this because I think that this is a little bit of part of the reason that we started this podcast was to give some insight into the therapist's mind. And this is something that happens a lot in my sessions too, but we're human, and so we're gonna have an immediate response or reaction to something. And so when I first read this question, my immediate reaction to it was one of protectiveness over the listener who submitted the question and feeling like, well, that's not fair. Like they have this family tradition. Clearly, it's something that means something to them. I was feeling maybe a little bit of annoyance towards the sister's boyfriend. And so I
Okay.
think that that's important to note is that that was my initial assessment, judgment, um, around the question. So
That's
I
interesting because I'm just going to add that I actually had the opposite reaction. So I'm
Did
excited.
you?
Yeah, I did. I did. But go ahead.
Okay, but I love that. I love that to just acknowledge, okay, these were our first immediate reactions and responses to it. And then what? How do we then approach it as a therapist? Because a part of our work and our job is to take that step back, to take a little bit of like our a breath and remove ourselves a little bit from our own initial jump assessments of it. And so when I did take a little bit more time to think about it, I think initially what came up for me was, obviously this tradition and their experience of the holidays is meaningful to them, and so what I would want this listener to reflect on is really what giving gifts is about. Why is that meaningful to them?
Okay.
Um, maybe it's their way of expressing thoughtfulness, or an excitement around, oh, I found this perfect thing for this person, or I thought of this person and I want them to know that I thought about them. Maybe I love how we all sit around the Christmas tree and we talk about the presents that we got for each other. Maybe I love that connection piece of it, the laughing, the togetherness of it. And so when somebody comes in and says this is materialistic, maybe that takes away from the true meaning that's underneath of the gift giving. And so that was my first thought was, can you try to figure out why this is important for you, why this is meaningful for you? And clearly, I think there's probably a little bit of um, frustration that's coming up for this listener, understandably. But can you try to step away from that yourself and say, okay, here's why I'm feeling hurt. Here's why I'm feeling protective over this tradition that we have. And here's what's coming up for me. This is why it's meaningful for me. And this is why I'm feeling upset that maybe this is being jeopardized.
Yeah, I think that's a fair perspective. And in noticing my reaction of kind of like, yeah, it is a lot of money. And it, like I kind of, even in maybe understanding where the boyfriend is coming from, I do think traditions in general they're deeper than whatever the actual practice is, right? It's more so about the, the sense of like shared identity. It's about like having that common experience. There's something to like the consistency of it. It has shared meaning, it's connection. And so I was trying to like remind myself of that, yeah, maybe there's some critique there of the gift giving piece of it, but recognizing that, traditions are about the connection that it forms amongst the people who all participate in it. So I do empathize with the listener, and it can be difficult when you're inviting new family members in and they have a difference of opinion, and it can feel like an attack on your values or your sense of connection or something that you find meaning in when someone maybe doesn't, value it the same.
Well, I also am a little curious around, is there some grief that's coming up around the family dynamics changing? This this could be representative of things are changing, traditions are changing, there's new people coming into the family. Is that hard and difficult? And is there some understandable grief around things aren't the same as they were for a while?
Yeah, which is very normal, and families do change. And I do think it's one of the reasons that it is important to just try to be present and appreciate the moments that you do have, because even when you have traditions that repeat every year, no 2 years are exactly the same. Like you're going to
Mhm.
have family members who join, maybe, and maybe some who aren't there anymore. And you don't always know that. You can't always anticipate that. Or if you have children, like they're not going to be that age and stage anymore. And so, kids get older, they may not want to spend as much time with you doing those same traditions. And so, just really being able to appreciate the moments that you do have and recognizing that, like, there's no guarantee that this is going to look exactly the same next year. So, we've got to appreciate the moments that we have.
Yeah. Traditions don't have just like you're saying, don't have to be the same every year for them to be meaningful, for them to find that purpose that they were filling. They can grow and change and evolve in the same way that your family and your experience is gonna grow and change and evolve. So, maybe some practical advice to give this listener is if you can identify what it is about this tradition that's meaningful for you and your family, can you then communicate that in a way that isn't like, well, this is the way we do things, buddy. So you're going to have to get on board. Like, can it be a little bit more of either with her sister or with this boyfriend or as a family in general and kind of say, here's why this is meaningful. This is something that I'm looking for. Can we compromise? Can we find something else that still hits on the meaning and the connection that we want to feel around the holidays, that we want to feel through our traditions, but in a way that does make sense for how our family is growing and changing?
I think that's a great and like practical way to go about it. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on, like you just said, either with the boyfriend or with the sister, because I hold the opinion that that is on the sister to do, like meaning the sister's the one who's in this relationship, and if she's being influenced by a partner, um I think that the family should have the conversation with her, not necessarily the partner, because she's the one who maybe has participated in the tradition in the past. She's the one who has the connection with her family. And so I agree that, like, sitting down, I'm not suggesting the partner can't be a part of it, but I would caution against, like, almost removing the sister from it and then creating this beef with the partner. You know what I mean? Because they're just
Mhm.
coming with their perspective and, like, their beliefs
Right.
on things. And I do think it's the responsibility of the person who's bringing the new member in to,
Yes.
like, play that middle ground and either help her family understand that, like, no, this is something that, like, my feelings have changed about, or, to say to the partner, listen, I know you have these feelings, and also this is my family tradition that, may not change. So we've got to figure out a way to kind of work with it. So I do think it's important that the sister kind of remain in the middle and not let the tension be between the family and the partner.
I agree with that. That's my and that could not be the right answer. That's fine, but I absolutely agree with that. And I think you brought up something that I just wanted to touch on too. I definitely have been kind of like, okay, well, what does gift giving like mean to this listener and why is it important to them? But I think it's also fair to say, what does gift giving mean to this boyfriend and what have the messages been around that for them? And so understanding that, yeah, you are coming from different traditions, different families, different approaches in how you see things. Um, but if you have that conversation with the sister and just kind of say, this is why maybe I'm upset about this, or this is what's coming up for me, she then can be that bridge between the two of like, well, here's what he's thinking, or here's what it means for him. And trying to maybe find a little bit of that compromise of, okay, well, maybe you know, we can still give gifts in some capacity. Maybe we just give one like thoughtful gift, or maybe we just, um, maybe we have a spending limit on this. It can be different ways of approaching the same idea, but just in a way that compromises and that everybody feels happy about or can partake in.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing, and I can be quick sometimes to, like, think about solutions, but I did jump there of like, okay, how do we, find a middle ground? Can we do homemade gifts?
Right.
Or do we do Secret Santa, like you said, what just having to give one gift or, things of that nature? Or is it possible that they just don't participate in the same way? And then you have a choice as to whether or not you want to give them gifts anyway, even if they don't reciprocate. It kind of reminds me of like the Mel Robbins let them theory, like let them and then let me, of that concept of like if they don't want to do it or it doesn't mean the same thing to them, let them do what is important to them, but then you still have to adhere to what's important to you. So you may say, well, this is important to me. I could imagine if this person happens to be their love language, if it's gifts, I could definitely see this like having another layer to it. And so you may say, this is a part of the way that I show my love. I don't care if you give me a gift in return, but I still want to gift you with this. So I think being okay and accepting the fact that as families change, sometimes traditions change, but you still get to say like what is important to you and stick to that if that is what makes you feel settled and okay with your decisions.
Yeah. And there doesn't have to be a perfect compromise, but I think the importance is having just a shared understanding because you don't want your sister or the boyfriend to feel ostracized. You don't want them to feel put out in any way. I think that, that there's obviously a lot of family tension that happens for a lot of different reasons. If you want to make sure that that there isn't that tension, that you still feel included, having conversations around the elephant in the room, having conversations around I hear where he's coming from. This is how I feel. And just, yeah, I think even just acknowledging it can kind of help release some of that tension that they might be feeling around these dynamics changing. And I think that there is an avenue for both people to kind of feel comfortable with whatever solution comes from it, um, or just to feel understood, even if it's not the outcome that you're hoping for. Having that experience of feeling validated is also an important one.
Yeah, definitely agreed there. Um, I think kind of in defense of the family a little bit, or in defense of the listener who wrote in, I also think it's unfair to expect that when you start dating someone, that you are going to come into their family system and change the way that they do things. Of course, we are influenced by each other, we're impacted by each other, and just you being a part of the family system is a change in and of itself. But I think, especially in newer relationships and, first time spending the holidays with a partner or your first time, meeting a partner's family, I do think there's a certain amount of just I don't even know what the word is, like healthy respect or just like acknowledgement that this is a system that existed well before you got there. You can certainly add to it. Like the system can be enhanced by you being a part of it, but you can't just come in and start moving furniture around. You don't walk into someone's home and just like, oh, this would look nicer over here, right? So, and I'm not suggest. I don't know that that's the way the boyfriend has presented this. He may have just been very honest about his opinions to his girlfriend, and maybe she relayed that to family. But I do think there should be some level of like, okay, let me fill this out a little bit and kind of understand how they do things, maybe before I start suggesting to do things differently. But that being said, I also don't think the boyfriend is like required to participate simply because he's a new member, right? Like, so there's got to be some balance in there where the family is making space for a new member and also the new member is like easing their way into the family system and not just coming in and like wrecking shop.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that that is perfectly said. And I think that goes back to your point about the let them theory. Like if they say, okay, this is how you guys are doing things, I just don't necessarily care to be a part of it. Okay, that's fine. They can own that. They can own you don't have to change that tradition just because they don't want to. And they also have to be okay with saying like, that's fine. That's okay with me. This is my choice. I don't have to do this. I don't have to be a part of this. And the family doesn't have to expect me to be a part of it. and they can continue. I completely agree with, I don't necessarily know that it is somebody's place to come in and say, I don't want to do this tradition the way that you guys have been doing it when it's when it's their family tradition.
Sure. 100%. Yeah. So we need a healthy mix of like flexibility, but then also like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like elasticity, like a little bit of
Mhm,
stretch, like a little bit of
mhm.
give, but then also not just completely letting go of all of the structure that kind of makes up your family identity. Traditions are rooted in a sense of identity. And so I think that does need to be respected while understanding they are absolutely going to change. And I do think
Yeah.
bringing kids into a situation does often challenge this because sometimes, I mean, this is a boyfriend girlfriend situation. Sometimes people are okay with like having these differences until their children are involved and they maybe don't want their children to participate in something, or it's really important that their children do it a particular way. So I would also say to this listener, if this boyfriend ends up being a long term member of the family and they potentially grow their family, this could be good practice for how you all are going to handle just the changes that come with someone new, with different ideas, different traditions, maybe different beliefs. Think of it as practice for those future moments, which are inevitably going to, come up in one way or another.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Um, I hope that that's helpful for the listener. I hope that they're able to feel like, okay, I feel validated maybe in that this is difficult, that this is a change, and hopefully have some idea of how they can move forward in a way that feels right for them and for their family.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Really hoping that the holiday goes well and that there are no blowups over this particular difference. But definitely just a relatable topic. So wishing
Yeah.
everyone the best as they continue or revise their family traditions. And with that, I think we will sign off.
All right. Talk to you soon. That's it for today's episode. We hope it gave you something to reflect on, or maybe even that aha moment.
If so, you know the drill. Rate, review, subscribe, and don't forget to text it to the group chat. Remember, sharing is caring.
If you have a question you want us to tackle, big or small, we want to hear it.
Email us at info@askatherapistpod.com or slide into our DMs on Instagram at askatherapist_pod.
You bring the questions.
We'll bring the insight and probably a metaphor or two.
This is Ask a Therapist.
See you next time.